Zara Michaels walked through the halls of Katie's empire, her familiar steps commanding respect and attention. She had seen Katie's grow from the scratch when her mom, Mrs. Catherine Oba, started her business. She and her two children, Johnson and Zara, were the first employees of her empire. They sold all household items, supplying it to shops and supermarkets each day after school. They quickly dropped their bags, freshened up, and headed straight to their parlor. Their parlor had initially served as their warehouse from where they distributed their household brands. Mrs. Katie, their mother, had a great business acumen. It wasn't long after Mrs. Katie started out her supply chain before she realized she had a natural talent for entrepreneurship. She learned to manage finances, negotiate with the companies she sold their brands, and to market their products effectively. The products she sold were detergents, insect repellents, and general cleaning agents. She expanded from her first company to become distributor of many more companies. It all started when Mrs. Catherine Oba was laid off after 12 years in the workforce. Mrs. Katie had been a customer relation officer at Kinder Telecommunication Company. She was known for her reliability, her hard work, and as a worker who always went the extra mile. Her colleagues admired her, and her managers often praised her dedication. But one fateful day, everything changed. The company announced a massive restructuring, and Mrs. Katie found herself among those who were being laid off. The news hit her like a ton of bricks. Mrs. Katie felt a wave of panic wash over her as she thought about her house rent, her children's school fees, and the countless day-to-day expenses that depended on her steady income. Katie was a single mom who depended strictly on her steady job for all her support. The initial shock shook her to the bones, giving way to a deep sense of loss and uncertainty. Her job had not only served as the source of her income, but had become a major part of her identity. The more the days went by, the more Mrs. Katie sank deeper into a deep pit of anxiety and depression. She struggled to sleep every night, her mind clouded with worries about the future. She felt isolated despite the support of her children and few friends. But because of what had happened, Mrs. Katie began to look for what else she could do apart from a job. The more she thought about this, the more sleep she loses. One day, as she went to weekend market, she saw a household company advertising their brand. It was a new brand and rarely known in the market. She drew closer and asked some questions concerning the new brand. Thankfully, the state manager was there. "I want to become an independent marketer of your brand," she said. "Yes, we need independent marketers. Contact us at our office at 122 Ilgeli Street by next week." Mrs. Katie went home happy for the first time. There seemed to be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. By Monday, she was at the address given to her by the manager. They discussed about the new venture as the manager asked her some questions. "Have you ever been a salesperson before?" "No," came her reply, "but I have attended to customers at Kinder Communication for 12 years. "Tell me more about it. Can you meet up with our monthly target?" he asked. "Yes," came Mrs. Katie's reply. She quickly filled out the form. She also cleared her little savings as upfront payment before she could receive goods in bulk from the company. As she went home that day, she quickly cleared out her living room and transformed it into a mini store. In 3 days' time, the company brought their first supply. Mrs. Katie and her two children worked tirelessly as though their existence depended on the sales of those products. At first, the business was slow, but gradually, Mrs. Katie was able to sell off in a week's time. You are the fastest to sell off these products in this state, commended the manager, Mr. Rotobi. More and more of their products were given to Mrs. Katie, which she sold in no time. After 2 months of hard work, Mrs. Katie was made the key distributor of the household brand of Grandia detergents in the whole of the state of Lagos. Mrs. Katie continued to grow. Soon, she built a warehouse and employed people. Johnson and Zara were the important part of Mrs. Katie's success story. Mrs. Katie also became not only the distributor of Grandia detergents, but also bought into other companies, becoming a key distributor as well. Now at 60, Mrs. Katie's dream year of retirement had come. She had to leave the business in the hand of Johnson and Zara and travel to Portugal, where she had permanent residency. I will only come back to visit Nigeria, she said, as she waved both Johnson and Zara goodbye. Johnson was already married for a year now to his heartthrob ifeoma. Zara was still single and was working with his elder brother, who had become the company's manager. But Johnson had always been suspicious of ifeoma. Once he had traveled on a business trip, he forgot some of the company's vital documents with which he should have traveled. There at the office, Zara received a call from his elder brother. "Please, Zara, can you hurry over to my house and bring me the company's environmental certificate? Once you bring it to the office, scan it and send it to me now. I'm waiting." Zara set off immediately to his brother's house, knowing that his voice sounded urgent. She left all that she had been doing and hurried over to his house. As she approached the door, she overheard ifeoma's echoing laughter. She was talking and laughing with someone. It sounded like a male voice. "Ifeoma, Ifeoma," the voice said, "I have really missed you. I wish your husband would be traveling every weekend." Zara's eyes widened. She froze, maintaining absolute silence to know if she can hear more. Just then, her car key fell from her hands, making some noise. Just after then, she stopped hearing their voices. She then knocked on the door, but there was no response. She stood there for some minutes, knocking over and over again, but yet there was no answer. As she knocked on the door, she started shouting, saying, "Ifeoma, open this door. There is something urgent my brother sent me to collect." After what seemed to be eternity, Ifeoma opened the door, rubbing her eyes with her palm as though she just woke up from sleep. "Please get the keys to the safe. There is a document my brother asked me to collect." "And why didn't he call me?" Ifeoma thundered. "He's been trying to call you, but your number had been switched off. He needed the document so urgently. Without it, he can't finish up with the business that had taken him to Abuja." After Zara had taken the document, she turned to Ifeoma and said, "I just piped low to collect this document first because Bro Johnson needed it urgently. But don't think I don't know what is fishing within this house. When I was at the door, I overheard the voice of a man, but as soon as my car key fell to the ground, making some noise, everywhere became like eyes. Maybe you have hidden him, or he had jumped through the fence." Continue. "One thing I know is that every day is for the thief, but one day, just one day, is for the owner." Ifeoma's face became very angry, like that of a tiger. She started shouting at the top of her voice, I know you never liked me from day one, but duh, I'm married to your brother, and that's it. If you don't like it, go ahead and hug the transformer, you ugly looking shapeless amoeba. If you were beautiful enough, you should have been in your husband's house by now. Jealousy. Ifeoma continued on, ranting and jumping up and down. But Zara knew her brother needed the document so badly. She left her as she trailed behind her, tying her wrapper and giving it to her, woto. But Zara ignored her, entered her car and drove off. After she had scanned the document and sent to her brother, she then called him to narrate her experiences at his house. Johnson calmly listened to Zara, taking in all she said. He weighed it side by side with the report his wife, Ifeoma, had earlier given him. Ifeoma had earlier called before Zara's report, saying and crying as she made her reports to Johnson. "Johnson, my husband," she began, amidst her sobs. "I was on my own, oh. When your sister came to the house, she did not even inform me that she is coming. She just barged into the house, and the next thing is that she heard a man's voice. 'Warn your sister, oh. Warn her,' oh," she said as she ended the call. "See, brother," Zara continued, "I have never had cause to suspect your wife, though she is ill-mannered and all that. But I have never suspected her. But today's event left me dumbfounded." Johnson, on the other hand, was worried as a result of the news he had received. He thought of how he had met his wife, Ifeoma, when he traveled to the village. That fateful day, as he drove around to see one of his uncles, he saw her as he drove along the road. As Ifeoma approached towards him, he could not but notice her stunning beauty. Her radiant smile, flawless skin, and captivating eyes left a mesmerizing effect on him. He immediately pulled over to say hi. Though Johnson noticed her rudeness and disregard for others. But for Johnson, her charm and beauty is all that mattered. Even after he introduced her to his family, two of his family members, including Zara and one of his uncles, pointed out the way Ifeoma behaves. "She seems to have a total disregard for everyone," said Uncle Uche. "Marriage is a journey, a long journey that can make or mar you. Look well before you leap," Uncle Uche advised. On Ifeoma's part, she does not have any love for Johnson. She saw him as a mungo pack. "He is too dry for me. But what can I do?" she said. "I will just marry him, pretending to love him just for his money." Just few weeks after their grand wedding, Ifeoma's bad behavior, which Johnson had overlooked because of her beauty, began to strain their relationship. Johnson, on his part, had been kind and generous to her, but yet her demands were so much and she lacked appreciation. But to think that she'll be cheating on him just a year into their marriage is unthinkable. Johnson landed Lagos that Thursday afternoon. He headed straight to his office to hold an official meeting. After the meeting, he discussed with Zara at length. "I have decided to mount the CCTV camera in the house without her knowledge. This kind of accusation is grave and needs evidence to prove," Johnson concluded. So as they traveled for Christmas vacation that year, the CCTV camera was mounted. Ifeoma had no idea what had happened. After they were back, she still continued in her escapade, returning to her business as usual. Every day, Johnson would go over to his laptop and watch his house using the camera's connection. Ifeoma does not just have one man, but 3 different men who visited her at different times and days and slept with her on her matrimonial bed. It's been a month since the CCTV camera had been mounted. Johnson played along as though nothing is happening, although he now sleeps in a different room claiming to be tired. One fateful Sunday evening, Johnson settled down on his laptop and began to check the CCTV camera footages for the past 1 month. He was dumbfounded at what he saw. Not only was his eyes seeing the unbelievable, but his ears also tingled at what he heard. Not only was she cheating on him, but she had planned to kill him in a month's time and to sell the company they had built and run away with the money with one of her man's friends. In one of the CCTV cameras, she had spoken with a woman who would bring her poison. The poison has portions. The next day, when Johnson had gone to work, the woman arrived in her house. She brought with her 3 categories of poison. This one will kill him instantly, while this one will kill him within 6 months if given at the right dose. This one, however, she said, will make him sick and slim down, and then within 3 months, he is gone. Ifeoma thanked her profusely, opting for the third one. I think the third poison will give me what I want. The woman gave her the third poison, which she carefully hid in her cupboard. Johnson watched from his laptop, his hands and legs trembling. He was too afraid to sleep in the same house with Ifeoma. He therefore went to the police station, handing them over his evidences. Not quite long, the police arrived for their investigation. Ifeoma swore that she knew not what they are saying. "I've been wrongly accused," she said. Without much waste of time, the police showed her the CCTV camera footage. And then she turned to start pleading for mercy. She was promptly arrested for attempted murder and spent 20 years in jail after her conviction. Hey viewers, what are your takes on this amazing tale? Dear young men and women, before you marry, look well before you leap. Many young men and women have cut short their lives by marrying spouses who kill them in order to take over their wealth. Please do share your takes on this amazing tale and kindly subscribe as we load you with lots of amazing and educative tales on African Tales by Oma. Bye for now.